everyone who's here, request and more from logistic purposes, let's keep the gates closed. We have got people in here. Also, we are right now planning to get this over by 1:25. So we have got this much of time, so we will keep a track of it. So to start with, let me just quickly introduce myself. I am Bridge. I lead the government technology practice for KPMG and also look at AI COE for government. We have got a very distinct panelist with us, but I will introduce them as and when we go to them so that we save time. Now, this topic here today is about democratization of AI. Now, this requires to answer us a very important question. When this entire AI comes to its fruition, is the last man there in the room, is the last man there in some town, is the last man at some village, is getting the full benefit of it? And if the answer is yes, we have done a great work. Now for India, this becomes all the more pertinent given the population we have, around 1.4 billion people, speaking more than almost 200 languages, 22 being official, but we actually speak much, much more than that. Also, the fact is that we have got people who live in various types of, I would say, various places which have got different level of access, both the technology as well as the devices through which we consume technology. And that is where it's very, very important that when we go and implement AI, we ensure that the language barrier is broken. We also ensure that this AI reaches to people irrespective of their location, irrespective of their income levels, irrespective of the language they speak. So we have got a very distinguished panel who has been working in this space, and we are going to look at, and we have got people who do this work for their living globally. They do this part of work as a breaking the barriers for people here. Amitabh is here. So I will start, Amitabh, directly with you. But before that, let me just quickly introduce Amitabh. So Amitabh is the Chief Executive Officer of Digital India Bhashni Division. He leads one of India's most ambitious IT initiative, or rather an AI initiative, which focuses on breaking language barriers and enabling digital inclusion across Indian languages. He also serves on key national committees, including the India AI Dataset Platform Working Group, Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence, and also has an advisory role across agriculture, rural development, digital health. Under his leadership, Bhashni has evolved into a leading platform which enables real-time translation, multilingual AI, and also collaboration between government, academia, research institution, and industry to advance India's language technology capabilities. So welcome, Amitabh. We have been fortunate to be working with him on multiple initiatives, and while he touches upon on some of them, the very first question, Amitabh, which I had of you, is that when language is treated as an digital infrastructure and not only as an application feature, what fundamentally changes? The way the standards are adopted, the way the scale is to be done, and the way the public accountability is to be put in place.
Yeah, means when you are, language where it comes very easy to us when you are looking at it as a human being, because you start as soon as you are born and you are, you're exposed to language actually. Your mother talks to you, your father talks to you. So it comes as a very natural attribute to yourself. But when you are treating it as a digital infrastructure, it actually is meaning a lot. And if it is a national digital infrastructure, it is quite different from what it should, what a normal course of way you are looking at languages. We are looking at languages in national digital infrastructure into multiple layers. The first layer is about data. The digital data should be available, visible, and should be in the form of a corpus for training the AI model. Of course, when you're looking at other aspects of digital data, which is the content, that should also be available. So that's the first piece of it. And obviously, when you're looking at data to train AI models, there are standards, there are systems, there are ways in which the digital data is to be collected, annotated, labeled. So there are some things which we have to do. The second part of the thing which is there is about, the AI models itself, which has to be built up using the digital data. And that again has a lot of things which has to be put into the, lot of things have to be taken care of in terms of sovereignty, in terms of biases, in terms of does it reflect what we want to say as far as language is concerned. There has to be glossaries which has to be built in. There has to be contextuality which has to be built in. And a lot of things which has to be built in. There are some soft aspect of it, and then there are some tangible, definable aspect of it. That's how the language model goes across. And top of it comes as infrastructure, which is applications, which is actually the layer by which the people interact with each other. So you are looking at data, you are looking at models, you are looking at the applications, and to host all these models and deliver these as a service, you are looking at that platform, which actually is able to take that service capability on service level agreements so that it actually delivers what we want to do. So means it suddenly, when you are looking at it as a digital platform, you have so many things to take care of, and you are right that it will perhaps interact with 1.4 billion people for different purposes, and hence again, it has to be, despite so much of diversity, it has to be still interoperable, still having some standards, and still taking care of those nuances of everybody being different. So, that's a big challenge which we would have. Digital systems are known to basically be standard prone, if I say so, because they want standards to be there. And here is a situation where diversity has to become a standard. So it's a challenge by itself.
Thanks, Amitabh. And in fact, this is a very, very important, right now, I'd say that the discussion which has been going on for quite some time, that whether these language capabilities and the models that we are currently developing now, should that all be developed in-house? And we've seen the approach that Bhashni has taken, where Bhashni itself is not developing those models. It is crowdsourcing it. So there are companies, like Google, like Microsoft, AI for Bharat, the education institutes. They are all bringing it all together, and that's where I'll bring Calista, because she's one who has been collaborating across the globe, bringing in the ecosystem together to answer some of these questions. But before that, let me just quickly introduce Calista Redmond. So she's the Vice President of Global AI Initiatives at NVIDIA, where she leads strategic collaborations with governments, ecosystem partners, and product teams to advance sovereign AI and national scale AI programs. She focuses on strengthening digital resilience, enabling local innovation, and shaping AI ecosystems aligned with national priorities. Now, prior to NVIDIA, she served as CEO of RISC-V International. Prior to this, she also held senior leadership position at IBM. And prior to that, she's been an entrepreneur across 4 successful technology startups, which is almost exhausting, It's so much you have done. So, Calista, but let me bring you in this discussion. So in your current role, you engage with multiple ecosystem partners, including government, including civil society, private sector players. How do you see these players coming all together and ensuring that an ecosystem is getting developed? And also, there's another discussion, and since you lead that program across the globe, so I wanted to check with you on this entire sovereign part of it. Because we are all discussing sovereignty, so is it something which is like a defined word, or is it a spectrum where we say, okay, fine, sovereignty can mean different things to different people? But the moot question remains that how do we ensure that while the countries go and develop their own infrastructure locally, we still are engaged with the larger global ecosystem so that we are able to provide our services globally? So, Calista, over to you.
Well, is this on? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Amida, and the work you're doing at Bashini is absolutely stunning. And what I'm taking away from what you just said is diversity is the new standard, right? And that plays in really well to the work that we do at NVIDIA, in that when I look at and speak with governments around the world, when I speak with ecosystem partners around the world, it is all about that local diversity, whether it's in language, whether it is in workloads, in industries, in the types of challenges that we're trying to solve for. That diversity is actually the new standard. And that is where the promise of AI can help us overcome and accelerate on that so rapidly. And so it is, my job is so fun every day. It's like, what fresh new challenge can we encounter together? So when I talk to governments about what is sovereign AI, I mean, that seems to be a different definition depending on who you talk to. In some cases, that sovereign AI is, how can I help my nation become the strongest nation for my people, for my companies, for my startups, for my students, for my citizens? How can we become the strongest possible and the best that we can be for the diversity that we have within our borders, right? And that is really kind of the guiding principle, that North Star, if you will, for why nations are pursuing their AI strategies. No one pursues an AI strategy because they're super excited to build a massive data center. They pursue it because they want to, increase their GDP, because they want to increase their opportunity for their nation, right? And so that's the democratization of AI that we're trying to pursue with our partnerships and diversity of partnerships that we have, and what we get to go run after every day with partners like KPMG and others, as many of whom are sitting here, and many of whom you see out in the expo area, including like more than a dozen different startups from India, right? So that's the diversity that we're talking about. That's the promise of kind of reaching each of those different challenges, whether it's in agriculture and helping farmers identify pests that are attacking their crops to best handle that in the most efficient and effective way to still reap the rewards of what they've planted, or whether it's reaching remote areas with healthcare information that will be critical in preventive or treatment types of medicine, right? So those are the types of things that we get to go talk about. But what's really exciting is when we bring together governments who are laying that infrastructure for a nation, together with industries for that public-private partnership to sort of apply that AI to those industries. So when you apply AI to an industry, you accelerate and leapfrog forward in its competitive capabilities. So those are some of the things that we get to talk about. I have no idea if I've answered your question at this point because I get really excited about this topic. But I think that, as you can see, that is sort of why we pursue these things together with governments as well as private sector.
In fact, Calista, I would not know whether we'll be able to come back to you, so I will ask this question right away. Look, what we have been doing, and there's a team here, so Google is helping in doing that, so bringing in a lot of local data sets together. Again, we have got large data centers getting created locally. But the question is that for the people who are getting trained, so who are gonna be using and creating new AI solutions out there. Now, is it a good idea, to get our own models, who understands our cultural nuances, who understands our languages, and then get our people trained so that they can go and serve the population, this large 1.4 billion population? Or you feel that it makes sense to still go and get exposed to and start to use the models developed by someone else, because at the end of it, we are a global workforce. So we don't serve only our country, but we serve the entire globe.
You touched on this earlier in your comments. It's about that invest locally and feed into that global marketplace, that global ecosystem. And I think that's a really important sentiment that we all need to keep in mind. It is absolutely critical that we create those local models based on very, true and genuine, high fidelity local information. As as we've heard, like feeding the most pure information into those data sets so that you have the most accurate outcomes, while at the same time leveraging those global LLMs as well. There's room for all of that, right? There's fit for purpose, and there's different workloads that we're going to be encountering, but it is absolutely critical that we have those models being built in India, by India, across all of these languages. I know that we're beyond 22 and less than 200, 36, I think you said? Yeah, I have to change my charts for tomorrow when I start to tell about the amazing things India is doing. So yes, we need to do both. So we need to leverage both, but it is about that local investment, and it is about standing shoulder to shoulder with your global peers so that you're working in concert. If you're truly going to raise your economy, it's about bringing more intellectual currency, financial currency, social currency into your country. To do that, you must engage in those global markets to create and foster the developer ecosystem, to foster global supply chains, and to foster global markets, right? So those three elements are absolutely critical and reasons why you need to continue to that local investment while engaging globally.
Thanks, Holster. I think this helps because somewhere, and I will bring Shankar next, because what we are creating is large-scale solutions. India already has a big story around the digital public infrastructure. And but before I go to Shankar with question, let me just quickly introduce him. So Shankar Marwada is the CEO and co-founder of Ekstep Foundation, which he established in 2015. He's passionate about addressing social problems through technology and has extensive experience in large-scale projects, including being head of demand generation and marketing for Aadhaar, India's national identification program. And Aadhaar is something, Shankar, which gets spoken about almost anywhere when we talk about a population scale thing. And I'm sure when it started, it maybe never had an ambition that I will become so big, I will become something which almost everybody would be using, but it evolved. Now my question to you is, for DPIs to succeed, there are multiple things that needs to come together, need to work seamlessly. With that background, how do you see an inclusive AI, getting created, which then is used not only for a specific purpose, but it can be leveraged by multiple other ecosystem partners to create something which is countrywide?
Thank you, Bridge. One correction. When we started Aadhaar, we were thinking from 2050 and worked our way backwards. So by 2020, we expected certain things to happen, right? When we'll hit 600 million, when we'll hit 1 billion, etc. So a lot of it, you start with an imagination of what will happen at scale. The reason I'm bringing that up is, in India, at population scale, you have to factor in two things into your design. One is diversity. Kalista talked about that. Diversity by design. And the second is inclusion. If you have reached 1 billion people and there's still 500 million more, doesn't mean you have succeeded, right? And those edge cases are not an afterthought to be bolted onto your design. You start with those edge cases, right? The 13-day baby who needs an Aadhaar, the person who's lost his hands and still biometrics are there, a person who's a homeless person has no address, right? Somebody who does not remember when they were born. So those are you start by designing for that. And when you go down this path, what you realize is to achieve scale and impact sustainably, a lot of people have to come together. So as UIDI, we made sure we did the absolute minimum possible, which means, to give a common example, if you want to solve the problem of transportation, build roads and let others build cars and fuel and pit stops, etc. If you try to do everything, you will not scale. But if you can build that infrastructure well, do one thing, do that one thing very well so that the rest of the country can depend on you. That is infrastructure, which is nothing but shared capability. If you are building cars and I'm building roads, you will trust that I will build roads, and you will trust that the roads have less potholes and more roads. If you don't trust me on that, you'll start building your own roads. And that is economically very inefficient. What Bhashini is doing, what India AI Mission is doing, and what others are doing is building this capability in voice. And the other thing is, we look at technology to see what possibilities it generates, what superpowers is it hiding. Biometrics was hiding the superpower of, if I can prove your unique identity, I can transfer a lot of money, a lot of good things can happen on top. AI, we know, is the ultimate superpower. So the question for us is, what prevents someone from accessing the superpower? In India, surprisingly, it's language. But if everybody builds a full stack solution, the opposite of minimal, then we will go to only the places that they can reach. But in the way that India has done, collected data, high quality language data as a public good, AI for Bharat, IIT Madras, offering language-based services as a public good, as a shared capability, Bhashini, offering GPU, India AI. I believe this is the model for how we can take advantage. When the NVIDIAs of the world are working with the model builders to create better and better technology, while we are also building great technology, we are also building the roads which does not care whether the car is petrol or hydrogen or E, right? As the car gets better, people's lives improve because we have built the rest of the infrastructure. That's the path India is on. And by 2025, we expect India to be a voice first, Indic language first country that is taking advantage of the super intelligence that would be in our data centers. So exciting days ahead, but it places a responsibility on all of us to collaborate together, because each of us holds one piece of the puzzle. The day we think we have all pieces of the puzzle is a bad day. Collaboration, keeping the 1.501 billionth person in mind. That should be our target. Inclusion by design, diversity by design. That model or models that India will develop will be very helpful for the rest of the world to reapply in that context, whether it be in Africa, Latin America, whether it be in health, education, agriculture, or governance. So exciting days ahead when we crack the voice AI puzzle.
Oh, certainly, and Amitabh is here, and I've seen him so passionately driving that, so much so that a chatbot, which we are building together with him, got entirely revamped, saying, okay, fine, this is not voice first, this is also voice, but this will not do. And the fact is that when we see our own, drivers, while we give them an address, many of them actually do not go and type. They simply pick up the phone and speak the address so that they are able to take us to the right places. So somewhere our countries already started adopting this and not waiting for something more to happen first and before we start adopting it. So great interventions that ways. Let me also bring in right now Ashwini. So Ashwini, because somewhere it's very important to look at the way government is looking at it. And at the end of it, many use cases which get implemented, and somewhere the government is still the custodian of this entire trust and accountability part of it, and particularly when the AI is used for citizen service delivery. So, but before that, Ashwini, let me just quickly introduce you. So Ashwini Kumar is an Indian Administrative Service Officer of the 2010 batch from the Assam cadre, currently serving as a director at the Directorate of Information Technology, Electronics and Communication, Government of Assam. A key architect of the state's digital transformation, he leads major initiatives in e-governance, cybersecurity, public digital infrastructure, and data-driven policy innovation. He oversees flagship programs such as e-Prastuti, e-Office, Assam State Data Policy, and CBUD, and then there's an entire list of things that he does. The focus right now is, and again, does a lot of work around trust and security. So Ashwini, my question to you would be, as someone who's leading digital transformation in the public sector, what practical conditions must be in place, for AI to become a trusted layer for the frontline citizen services? Because it's important that if you're delivering certain services using AI, at the end, the citizens should be trusting it. It should not be where it has been done by some system which I don't know much about. It's a black box for me. But then please trust it. But how do we bring that trust element to the service delivery which we can do for citizens? Ashwini, over to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me for this esteemed panel. As we go from private to public sector, so government is the custodian of the biggest amount of data. So I am project director, iTech and CSD Society, where we are delivering around 930 services, citizen-centric services to all the citizens of Assam. So Assam has a population of around 34 million. We collect a lot of data. And as chief data officer, if you see the way data is being collected, the way it is shared, we need to look that, because if we don't collect the right data, we cannot make right policies. Our data being collected, lying in silos, do not talk to each other. When we frame our policies, so this data, when we don't take it into account, so your feedback mechanism fails. So what we do is we make policies, we make flagship programs using KPMG, PwC, Big Fours, and we implement these policies at the grassroots level. But at the grassroots level, conditions are entirely different. Trust, when we talk about trust, trust is the biggest currency. If you see banking system, what is banking system? It is just an intermediary, because people need someone they can trust on. People need someone they can rely on for getting anything. And the main purpose of having a government is trust and accountability. AI, the most important thing is we need someone to take the responsibility, because when you are delivering services, when the service is delivered, if something happens, who will take the responsibility? So first of all, you will have to define who will be taking the responsibility for that. It need to be impartial. We cannot be prejudiced by providing the services. And if you see, like most of the tech giants, they are US based. So when we are having LLMs, we have large reasoning models. So unless we train these models on the basis of the data we collect from the people, they will not work properly. Bhashini has been wonderful, because if you see, I had traveled outside India, so people, they use Google to translate, but it does not exactly translate the way it should. Bhashini is in itself a very nice initiative where we have different local languages, local dialect, where we can actually interact with each other. And now we are integrating Bhashini in most of the programs, and where we are having this Assam Governance State Delivery Program, where World Bank is again giving us around $100 million for this. So in that, Center for Data Management is the key thing. And it is one of the basic criteria that when we collect this data and we frame the policies, this data should be used in making the policies which will be implemented at the grassroots level. If we see at the infrastructure level, I look after the state data center. So it will take some time. Building that infrastructure will take time. But if we see the safety, security, accountability, and the privacy of the data, they need to be, properly studied. Only then we'll be able to have efficient implementation of AI, which is totally democratized, which is accessible to everyone, and everybody feels comfortable in availing all the services based on AI.
Thanks, Ashwini. In fact, one very important thing that you told, and it has been a age-long, I won't even say a problem, but aspiration is to how do you do a data-led policy making, and there are programs which have been there, and I'm glad to see Assam government is.
Actually, my focus is that we as government, we should be confident that the data should talk to each other. We should share that data with the private sector, so that the startups, they can use the data, they can monetize it, so that it benefits both the private sector and the public sector. And unless we use this data properly, because without data, AI is nothing. AI is basically a mirror of the society. So we want representative AI. We want AI to be like us. And it can reflect the true society only when the true data, which is actually collected when these basic facilities, basic services are delivered to common people. Only then we will be having a democratized AI.
Thanks, Ashwini. In fact, that brings, and I'll bring in Stefano, or Pierre Stefano. He leads our EU institutions and serves as an EMA head for government and public sector. Now, over his long tenure at KPMG, he has led major government transformation programs, overseen public sector consulting in Germany, and guided multi-government engagement across EMA region. Now, his work spans advisory, audit, and large-scale institutional modernization with a strong focus on public administration, governance, and reform. He continues to shape strategic collaboration with EU institutions and national government throughout the region. And Pia, I want to bring you here because Ashwini raised a very important point, is that how do we actually get these strategy implemented? We have had those strategies for quite some time, and India had its AI strategy, which has been done quite some time back, and multiple other countries, including EU, has done it. Now, what is currently still stopping, or what are certain challenges which the government are facing in converting these strategy into actual outcomes, which then can be used by the citizen? So that's a question, and thought that we'll bring a global perspective around that.
Thank you, Bridge. Well, first of all, I'm very glad to hear from you, Callista, that you said diversity is the new normal. To hear that from, I presume, US American feels really good these days, at least for me as a European, maybe also for you as an Indian. So thank you for that. Okay, coming back to your question, sorry, I had to say this. I'm glad that what I've seen and heard about in India, that you already have strategies, which is not the case everywhere in the world. And it's for sure not the case in many and most European countries, and also in the EU level. We do a lot about regulation. That's where we are strong at in Europe. Regulate first, and then, everything comes after. So strategy still needs to be developed in most governments, honestly. What we see is a lot of piloting. So there are pilots all over the place. Everybody is excited about AI, and all the governments on all levels, be it EU level, national level, state level, local level, everybody wants to try on AI. And a esteemed colleague of mine talked about a disease called pilotitis. So you're piloting one use case, yet another use case, but you never come really into a strategy and into tactics and into rolling out, and I'll come to that back in a second. So the main obstacles to really bring AI solutions to life is, well, mostly quite simple. It's the homework or the housekeeping you have to do. It's all about data. So data is fragmented, is spread around in governments, especially on different government levels, federal, state, local, several different ministries, authorities, departments. So to collect them, to sanitize them, to simplify them, to bring them into one structure, because this is the underlying what you need if you want to have a really intelligent artificial intelligence. This is what you have to do. So I think this is the biggest effort. You could say, okay, it's a big cleanup. It's an effort you should do, but it's a big one. So that's a practical issue. Now, in terms of what I've heard and about this Indian vision and this program, of course, when we talk about languages, so data already is in several languages, most presumably. So to bring them all to one database already is a challenge. But if we look to the output side of things, and absolutely agree with Mr. Amitabh, it's not about language, it's about semantics, it's about culture. There's much more than that comes with language. It's about the literacy levels that you have. It's about educational levels. And if we think about voice-to-voice solutions, so maybe someone on the street or which is illiterate may want to be approached or talked to differently than someone who had the chance to get higher education. So these are all very practical issues. You said diversity by design, in fact, and I think there's a lot of effort that goes into that one. And then I come back to the pilotitis. So I think one of the biggest challenges is really then rolling out AI solutions at scale. Because what governments typically cannot afford is something like a 80-20 approach. Say 80% is okay, 20% is wrong. That's what you also said, you know, do it for 1 billion people, but just, and the other 400 million we think about later. That's not possible. And someone has to push the button, right, in government. Somebody has to take the responsibility, and somebody needs to be, and that's a human, needs to be accountable. One, you say, okay, now we roll it out. We believe it's not hallucinating. We believe there are right outcomes. And that is a challenge, we all know. I mean, if I was in a governmental position and take all the responsibility, I also would be thinking twice or 3 times before I push the button and really roll it out. So that's a very practical issues that come with governments, other than maybe with corporates. Just think about all the beta versions we get from software, no problem. You know, Microsoft or Google say, hey, that's a beta version. And it's not perfect. You can try it, there will be mistakes, so what? This is something that governments cannot afford. So that's a very practical reason, and I think we still don't know and have no real, let's say, experience what the right level of confidence should be. So it will not be the 80-20. Is it 90? Is it 95? 99? 97? 99.9% preciseness? That's something we have to figure out. This may be as well, again, a cultural issue from country to country. I would say in Germany we need something like 110% of confidence. Maybe it's different in India, but these are, would say, the practical challenges and the practical obstacles that we see.
Oh, thanks, Pierre. And the fact remains that, and we've seen also an issue around building capacity. You know, so it's not only for the people who are creating AI, but also for the people who are consuming it. So for the people, for the general public, many times the government servants, because they have to first take an approach, and particularly when the AI is adopted in the government sector itself, are our government officials ready? You know, are they equipped enough to identify use cases or convert them, you know, into pilots and then scale it to the population? And I understand you've done something around that also. Anything around the public sector capacity building here?
Well, yes, of course, capacity building is extremely important, and training, and yes, people being capable. This is yet another big issue, and we could talk about that for hours probably. And what this is also something that we as KPMG are very much engaged to, is not to bring the new technology, because that's other companies doing it, but really bringing the capabilities into place, people that are responsible and accountable, how to work with that, how to deal with that, what are the new rules of the game, because this changes dramatically, also for bureaucrats and officials that at the end of the day will take the accountability. So also they need to be trained in a very good way, and often they are, and I said this yesterday on a topic, on a panel, often these people are not techies, so it's not people that really know what's really happening in that black box AI, right? However, they are the ones that are responsible. So this is also, from an educational point of view, still a long way to go. But we are there, and I think, especially in this country, I can see a great eager to approach this.
Oh, thanks, Pierre. And I'm seeing the time is passing off, but very importantly, let me just bring Harsh. And Harsh, I'm bringing you, you know, here at the end of it, because a lot of work that Google is doing in this space, you know, either talking about bringing the data sets together, actually going to the villages, taking those data, ensuring that everybody who needs to have an access to it gets an access to it, open source it. So there's a lot of work which you are doing within Google Research, which would be very relevant to this conversation. But before that, let me just introduce you, to the larger audience here. So Harsh heads the Gen AI, Google Research, Health AI, and core partnerships for APAC at Google, leading regional efforts across India, Singapore, Japan, and Australia. He drives partnerships that advance AI technology development and adoption across areas such as Gen AI, Gemma, MedGemma, international languages, health AI, agriculture, and a lot of things. Now my question, Harsh, right now is, now there's already a discussion about the LLMs which is happening, though using the LLMs are already present, creating your own LLMs. Then there's a discussion about how do we go into specific sector-related, models, and a lot of this is happening, in this area. Now, my question to you is that while these are getting developed, how important are the local data sets? Because there is a common perception is that ChatGPT and many other, say, even Gemini, is there, which has been trained on primarily non-Indian data sets, which may be a misnomer, but still, that's the perception we clearly have. Now, how are we ensuring that the data sets which are there, coming out of the country, who has our cultural context, get embedded when these models are either getting created or getting revised, as Pierre said, and also ensuring that many of these are made available, to the other set of people who are developing those models. So over to you.
Super. I might not have even needed the question because of the views I wanted to reflect. So maybe, although at the last, a quick 101, when we say data is needed for model training, that's a motherhood statement. What are we looking at? Are we talking about pre-training from scratch? Are we talking about post-training, fine-tuning? Are we talking about data which is required for grounding or for evals and benchmarks? If you go in that order, continuous pre-training, the pretty large LLMs have been trained, yes, on trillions of tokens. In fact, every patch of additional pre-training requires tens of billions of tokens. And that's where it's a misnomer to say that, okay, let's start to build a large language model using the local data. I have worked enough with Amitabh ji because our low resource language data, speech, text, cultural context is not amply present there. And at the core of these models, assuming you start with what I advocate a lot these days from the sovereign angle, is you start with an open model which can be hosted within the country, and then you can obviously fine-tune it for languages, for domains, to solve your particular purpose. Whether you are doing a MedGemma, whether you are doing an EduGemma, whether you are doing a I'm using Gemma, but Translate X open model, right? This is one reason that we shouldn't mix up the things, and the data set that's available, if it's in tens of millions of tokens, which is also, by the way, very hard, should be used for fine-tuning of the models. The second reason I just want to build on Shankar's point is that I spoke to Secretary Krishnan also, that India, all said and done, we are investing heavily in AI. But can we afford to have 100 companies all developing models from scratch, all spending $100 million, essentially kind of competing with each other, when today we are sitting in the agentic era? What does that mean? You can have a sort of a system, an architecture, which calls on a specific model as required. Your top layer can be pretty much a generic model, a frontier model. Your core reasoning can be a small language model that is there. So essentially, I think I just wanted to clarify these two aspects to be there, that from a sovereign perspective, we should really judiciously use our resources. And every startup that I talk to, I tell them, your architecture should be super plug and play. Tomorrow a new model comes in, it should take you 2 days to get your evals and benchmarks on it and get it running. And last thing, again, because Google is often sort of misquoted in collection of data, again, I started the largest project of speech collection data with a very clear mandate that all speech and cultural data that's collected is essentially open source Project Vani. It's available on AI Kosh, so that it's available for everyone to fine tune. And even though we are spending millions of dollars on it, we want to ensure that it's available for the ecosystem to use, and it is not seen as one company taking that data and using it. Last thing on data I'll say, there are certain really sovereign sectors like healthcare, finance, and so on, where I would heavily advocate that I was part of these two panels where the models should come to the data rather than the data going to the models. And I think in today's AI world, that is 100% possible. We have air-gapped environments, both with sort of, I believe with NVIDIA, with Google. So we have air-gapped environments which can have the model and the data reside in the sovereign boundaries of the country. We have open models which can be hosted, and what comes out is commercially and for research purposes owned by the model developer. So that's a lot, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
No, this is very helpful, because the fact is that many times there's an, I wouldn't even say misconception, but there's a very clear view, and that's where it at times could be competing views, that whether we should start, from scratch and build something which is very localized for myself, vis-a-vis we build on something which has already been developed, but while we are building on top of it, we bring a lot of local context then. And that's where we get the best of the both worlds. So I think that's what right now we are looking at. We are towards the end of our session, but I just want to still, and this is completely out of syllabus, but still I would want our panelists to reflect upon. So if you have this room full of, say, policy developers and, say, bureaucrats, what is one message that each one of you would like to give to them, which they can take back home when they plan for the next zone or next level of policy making around AI? So Amitabh, starting with you.
See, as one of the things which we are always having a challenge on AI, and what, obviously he pointed out that we are looking at continuously trying to build something new where we should be actually fine-tuning something which is existing. We should all be aware that whatever we build in the world of AI has a shelf life which is too low, because somebody else is working, somebody else is also picking up data and trying to build something there. So should we chase that, or should we look at what is our customer's requirement and then start looking at building that for him and co-creating that with him? I think that's the crux of it, rather than generally chasing everything and trying to do everything in its
Got it.
cross.
So customer creativity, say,
Yeah.
centricity and co-creation. Okay, let's start.
To echo on that slightly, the greatest challenges have always been overcome through collaboration. And collaboration can come from shared models, can come from shared infrastructure, can come from reuse or a running start from shared blueprints, libraries, tech stacks, you name it. So absolutely agree. Nobody should start with a blank sheet of paper. No one should start from zero. Collaborate and start from something that's already out there. And all of us, I think, have many things to start from.
Thanks. So collaboration.
As Calista has rightly pointed, collaboration is very important. And what I feel is private sector should earn the trust of public sector, of the government. Government wants to, wants to trust the private sector. They want to share the data. They want to do a lot of things. But it is from the private side, this collaboration, this initiative should be from the private sector, that they should trust the government, and they should, government wants to work with those people only who they can trust. So this trust is to be built up stepwise. So if that trust is there, I think there will not be any issue.
Sure. Thank you, Shankar.
To the policymakers, I would say this is a generational opportunity to recalibrate our ambition and aspiration and work back from 2035 and think of 10 scenarios, Nirmala from Nagpur in Marathi can do the world's best research sitting at home. Manish from Maharashtra can get access to jobs and skilling around him or her by just saying, here I am, this is what I'm looking for. So the possibilities are immense, but it can only be reached if we collaborate. As Ashwinji said, public sector is where the inclusion and the scale will happen. Private sector is where the innovation, risk-taking happens. Both have to work with each other. The development sector, philanthropy has to help fill the gaps, the bridge between one to the other. We cannot miss this opportunity, right? And we have to be inspired enough to run the marathon. Otherwise, after a sprint, you'll start feeling tired. You've not reached anywhere, right?
Thanks. Harsh?
There's a lot of discussion in the policy around liability arising out of hallucination. Who should own that? I believe it should start somewhere at the sort of end application level, and then it will automatically flow down to the core model and so on. Liability should be there, accountability, but it should start somewhere at the top level.
Okay, fair.
I echo Kalista and also Harsh. Cooperation is the call for the moment. I'm a big fan of digital sovereignty there where it's needed. You mentioned a couple of fields. Defense and national security would be another one, very important. And there are others where it's absolutely okay to go into public clouds, to use what's out there and do this. So a hybrid model is that what should be done, and not always to have the shield of digital sovereignty which stops you to gain from innovation and everything that is happening.
So thank you, Pierre, and we conclude this session. But before we go, there's a token of appreciation. So Alap, Nirachal can join here.